tell people who you are and what you do, and I don't know, whatever else you want to say.
Yeah, of course. I'm Lamy Wolfgram from Orlando, Florida, greatest state on earth. And I work in marketing for tech companies. So, more specifically, Lifecycle marketing, if anybody knows what that is.
Marketers will.
Marketers will.
Marketers will. And how long you been doing what you do?
I want to say it's probably been around 7 years.
So you've
been marketing.
Been in there for a minute.
Been there for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Started off mainly doing startups. I started with small company startups. I knew one of the owners of a small company, software company, and he had a bunch of side projects and side gigs. So then because obviously I didn't finish, but I worked at his company, and then I would put extra time in to work at his startups.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is I'm just learning in a different way.
Right.
So
that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, and I think most of what we're trying to talk about today is, it's a little bit loose, but we've kind of talked about, advice for finding jobs and talking about kind of some of the tech craziness, and then kind of any of your specialties too. I just kind of ask you some questions and get some notes for some of the people who are trying to learn maybe what you do, how you can teach people what you do, how to do what you do better,
Right.
So, yeah. I guess let's start with you had some notes on, or some tips, some of your life tips. I guess what's one of your biggest life tips for kind of working in tech or becoming Lamy and being the expert like you are?
I think one of the things that's added to my success is just always being curious, right? And your willingness to learn. I feel like a lot of people, they go to college or they go to, some sort of alternative education source, and they learn a bunch, or they just learn to get to the test answers and then pass the class. But then when you get out into business and you get into your career, you start to learn things to help you in your career, but a lot of the extra learning and educating of yourself just dies out. People stop reading books, people stop doing extracurricular activities, and it's just about work. And so all you do is get really good at your job and nothing else.
Yeah, sure.
And so for me, I was I'm just curious about overall business and entrepreneurship. And so when I first got started, I was let me go ahead and try out everything.
Sure, yeah.
So I initially came on, they wanted me to join the sales team. And I was I've done some sales in the past. I don't really like sales, right?
Yeah.
So did sales for a little bit, then I quickly switched over to marketing. And I was I love marketing. It's this whole storytelling aspect of it. And so that's where I really got involved, right? Started getting heavy into marketing, learning all the different ropes of marketing. And whenever you say that, it's so broad, right? Even that I'm in marketing, there's still different aspects of it that I'm still learning.
Right.
And and still trying to figure out how does this apply to either me or the business that I'm in.
Right.
So it's been kind of interesting.
Sure.
But I think always being curious and always trying to learn.
Yeah.
Right, is one.
So what got you to Lifecycle, and maybe elaborate a little bit, what is Lifecycle marketing? And because I know it kind of just as email, but I think there's probably a lot more to it than that.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about Lifecycle marketing.
Lifecycle, I've always been in heavy on the email marketing side of things.
Mm-hmm.
I think Lifecycle incorporates more of let's have a strategy. How does this affect, the overall business? I think oftentimes, like you said, emails and Lifecycle they coexist.
Right. Yeah,
They're exactly the same. And so, but Lifecycle I think is a little bit more where you're taking different departments into account and saying, this is the overall strategy of how it plays out. But this is how I'm responsible for the email channel, and then how I operate with other departments in marketing to say this is how you help contribute to the overall strategy of Lifecycle, from when a customer reaches our site all the way through to hey, they're engaging with us, we're nurturing them, then they become a client or a customer, and then from there we still are engaging to say hey, can we get you to renew, can we get you to come back to us and re-engage. So I think it's that whole life cycle, that circle.
Sure.
But it involves everybody in marketing.
How much are you working with other departments and versus, just like kind of being the guy who writes and sends the emails? How much are you like the strategy, or how much should a Lifecycle team be the strategy behind kind of that whole email marketing segment and where that fits versus just being the guys that write and send the emails?
Yeah, I think right now I'm probably at like a 40-60, right? 40% on the strategy, 60% on the execution.
And it probably varies per company, right?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
specific to your role, but yeah.
I think it should be...
Yeah, what's the ideal, I guess?
Yeah, the ideal, I think it should be more like a 50-50 or like a 60 on the strategy
Sure,
side than
yeah.
40% on the execution. Because you're really doing a lot of like email marketing, so you're only responsible for one channel.
Right.
But yet you're responsible for how all the other channels, right, are basically helping contribute to that one goal.
Right.
And so it's like, it's not like I'm managing anybody indirectly, but I'm also working with the heads of different, channels to say, teach me a little bit about like what it is that you're doing and how this helps out, and how does email like fit in that piece.
Yeah, what role does that play, right?
Right.
Well, because I come from kind of a growth background, so I'm thinking about acquisition, engagement, retention. And in my head, email largely occupies like the retention component, but it probably could do more in other places too, but I just haven't ever really leveraged it in that way. And that's probably something I could do better. But I'm just curious, is that common? Or I mean, like, what is the right way to be using Lifecycle? In the dream scenario, you're working at the dream company, they have nailed it.
Yeah.
How are you using Lifecycle effectively, and how do you define success for Lifecycle?
I kind of break it down into like, you have your potential leads, you have your nurtures, and then you have like your renewal, like batch, right? So you break it out in like those 3 different sections. But I think the potential leads is you're more playing like a support role, like you just mentioned, right? Like, a lot of acquisition, I think, through email is not as great. Like, a lot of those leads, a lot of people coming in through email, you just see that the quality of those leads aren't that great.
Interesting.
Right? And then when you get into like the nurturing phase, I think a lot of people expect to get some sort of email whenever you're engaging with a company.
Yeah.
But I think like prior to, a lot of times people will just say unsubscribe, mark the spam, like anything like that when you're coming to like lead gen. And so I think we play more like a support in the lead gen section, and then in the nurture is like our bread and butter, right? Like, hey, we're sending reminders. Lifecycle also includes like a lot of SMS, which I think is oftentimes overlooked. Like, we can do SMS, and we can do direct mail, and we can automate that. A lot of it is automation too.
I mean, at the companies I've worked at, I don't think anybody's ever really... I've seen a few companies leverage SMS a little bit, but not super effectively.
Right.
So that's interesting.
Like, even at my current company, like, we could be leveraging it a lot better, and I think they have in the past. And we're like rebuilding and like rediscovering new ways to get things done.
Right.
But SMS is definitely a plan that we plan to try and actually.
I know, like, the sales team has done some stuff with it, but I wonder if that's the most efficient use. I don't know. So it has existed, but I wonder how efficiently.
But going back to that, so nurture is like our bread and butter, and then you have like renewal. And I think like those 2 sections of like helping people re-engage with us and like, hey, like, you're coming up, we could renew your contract, especially like talking in tech, right? Or like, here's a newsletter that we can send out, here's some thought leadership, here's like different avenues to like get you to interact with. Yeah. And so like, you can get into content marketing, but a lot of that is going to be your channel to get that is email, right? Like, how do I get them back? Yeah. And so I think renewal and nurture are the 2 bread and butters for anything that's
and just even as you're saying this, it's like making sense to me why they call it the life cycle, because it's your role is basically to be really thinking about every potential point that could exist in this customer journey and trying to kind of optimize or nurture or have some point of contact that is not too much, too little. It's like the right point of contact. Right. That's really interesting. So kind of with this SMB audience in mind, so let me give you kind of a scenario. So I'm doing some stuff for my aunt's company. One of the things that I'm doing on my channel is a 30-day takeover of a small business's marketing. So my aunt runs a company. I've got crap all over my lips here. Talking too much.
No, you're good. Same.
Yeah. My aunt runs a company where she hires young, 20s girls to dress up as princesses and go to little girls' birthday parties. It's called Princess Parties by Natalie. It's great. It's cute. Everybody likes it. It's a great company. And so I'm helping her with some of her marketing, and I'm setting up some emails and stuff for her. I'm going to set some stuff up and kind of just send them or schedule them and let them go. And I'm no Lifecycle expert by any means. It's just kind of like a little tap on the shoulder every couple of weeks. But if you're going to go into somebody like that or give advice to somebody like that, where I'm going to go to my aunt and say, hey, here you go, this is your email program. What do you do? How do you start that program efficiently? Like, one, is that the right place to be putting resources? And two, if it is, how do you do that?
Email is like zero cost. So I think email is always good. I think every company should embrace it. It's highly effective for obviously being like zero cost, and like not zero cost, like it doesn't cost you anything, like, you know, the different platforms and everything like that you send your emails. So I guess if you include that, it does have a
but
cost.
even them, some can be free. I'm using Substack, which
Oh yeah,
is not like exclusively like an email program, but it sends emails and it's free. So
yeah, I think 100%, if she's already got clients, definitely that's where you can say, hey, like, I know you might have a birthday coming up or some kind of event. We'd be happy to, like, you know, here's our princesses, here's what we offer. So you can obviously go back to the people that have used you in the past. If they've written like great reviews, if they have other events, if they know friends, like do referral stuff. And so like email has just a huge like opportunity for everything and anything that you could think of. It's just mainly like the channel with which you're delivering them to different sections of marketing.
In that same note, this is something I've been trying to figure out too. Do you need a CRM to be able to do this efficiently, or do you just have to be kind of all over it? It seems like a CRM would be close to required for this.
I enjoy using a CRM. HubSpot's the one that I use.
Right.
And I'm extremely proficient in. I really love it. Right. Like it's a very low cost like tool in comparison to like Salesforce.
I know, and that's my thing is I want to use HubSpot for her too, but it's like $20 a month, and I'm like, she's a small business. She's not technical enough to get $20 of value out of it, you know? And that's the threshold. She's got like 850 contacts, and the threshold is like, yeah, like that's up to 1,000. And I'm like, okay, so I'm trying to figure out, you know, are there free CRMs, or like if you're coming in there, how would you set that up? Would you just say, hey, this is worth the cost, it's worth doing, or what would you suggest, you know?
There's other CRMs. I think it's better to manage it there because like every person that you've reached out to, you can just record it on that contact profile.
Yeah.
And so it's better to have that than like have like a spreadsheet or notes or any kind of like that kind of way of doing it. So I think it's all, you can automate things, you can make it quicker. So I think even like with HubSpot, I think that there's still great value, even though like you said, it's $20 a month. I think setting up some like quick automations for her and everything like that, of just saying like, hey, she can get people's birthdays on there. Like obviously people are like, hey, it's our daughter's birthday. So then you put that in your CRM, and then you can trigger an email around that time, like a couple weeks, maybe a month in advance. I like to do like a little bit earlier than that, right? Because obviously they're probably planning something to do for the birthday. So like if you can do like a month and a half, 2 months, and start sending some emails saying, hey, like we really enjoyed like doing your party, like
some kind of reminders,
some kind of reminders, and say, hey, we would love to do it again, or if you know anybody that is also having a birthday, we'd love to do something around that, like referrals, and like, hey, next time you get a percentage off, or like, hey, we'll get you a coupon. I try to stay away from some of the incentive stuff where it's like, hey, we'll give you money, because that can get a little tricky. And then people are like, hey, like you said you were gonna give me money for this, like where's it at? Like they almost expect it next day. So like anything like where you can maybe offer a discount on your next thing or something like that is better than saying like, hey, we'll give you money in return, or like a credit gift card.
It's a lot more work to automate that whole thing.
True. Which there also is like the time and effort that you have to put in into making those automations, which with HubSpot is pretty easy to do. And in my opinion, right? Obviously. I'm in it day in and day out.
I was gonna say, if you're brand new, it's not bad. I'll give them credit, but it's not quite like there's a little bit of a learning curve, you know. But
Agreed. I do like it because they have a lot of free sources of like education. Like they'll teach you how to use their platform for free.
They're great.
And so this isn't like a sponsorship for
I mean, not yet, but it could be.
But it could be, yeah. But it's just a tool that I really love. There's a lot of robustness that you can do, but I think 100%, like for her business, that'd be great. And there's a lot of free CRMs. I just don't think they're as efficient, right? Like the thing I like about it is they're robust. For the price. Obviously, the price goes up. And it's more than just $20 a month eventually. But I think you can really get, you know, your value out of it just by sending out simple email reminders. And I think you can send out sales sequences, which are just like workflows, what I'm talking about, like the automations. And they don't have to be listed as a marketing contact. That's how they get their payment.
Oh yeah.
And so per marketing contact, they charge you more in a tier. But you can send out sales sequences, which is basically the same thing, just a little bit less robust,
Yeah.
and get the same amount of
You can
value.
kind of work around it. Is what
Yeah,
you're saying.
you work
Okay, I
around
like
it,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that. I might have to try
Hopefully
that.
they don't hear that.
That's right. So maybe not a sponsor.
Maybe not a sponsor.
Interesting.
But,
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
Or is that the only business that you're working with right now, or
So I've got a couple. I've got hers, and then I have my buddy who is trying to start a property management company.
Yeah.
And then I've got another friend who he runs a couple different businesses, and I don't remember. I'm talking to him on Friday, and I don't remember if I'm doing one of his or like some family member of his. And then I have another friend who also owns a property management company who I will probably go and do some stuff with as well. Because the whole idea is like, I figure I've been doing this for about a decade, right? Like I've been doing marketing in some capacity for a while, and I'm much more of a technical engineer kind of marketer, but I figure there are a lot of things that I learned working at like pretty big companies that are relatively low lift or low maintenance and like not super complicated to implement that could have a huge impact on small businesses, because in my experience, most small business owners are really focused on just running their business and surviving, you know. Right. And when I say small business, I'm not talking like even employees. Like several of these people are like themselves and maybe some contracted help here and there, because once you start to get a little bit more help, it's kind of a different game. Same rules can apply, but obviously it's a little bit different. And so a lot of these small guys like are just so focused on the things that make money and not on the things that can make them more money. And so the whole idea for the YouTube show is come in with, you know, a decade's worth of experience, potentially bring along friends to help set programs up, and kind of make a show out of like almost like a extreme home makeover kind of thing, but for marketing in 30 days. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's kind of that's my elevator pitch. Is it's extreme home makeover for marketing, and then we just run like 4 campaigns over 4 weeks. So for my aunt, who's the Princess Party company, we did content campaigns, email, an affiliate program, and social media. And a lot of it's just kind of like creating those posts and scheduling them out. And so like I did a whole bunch of stuff on, I have an AI tool that I use called AirOps, and I was able to generate like 50 plus blog posts about like how to throw different types of princess parties. And so like how to throw an Ariel birthday party, how to throw an Elsa birthday party. And so that created a bunch of content, and then I just kind of formatted that and scheduled that for like the next 50 days. So she has content for like the next 2 months, and it's great. And it's driving tons of traffic. And then from that, I am taking that content and repurposing it in her emails, right? Because people who have used her in the past probably aren't going to go back to her website and read her blog. Yeah. That seems like more of a new customer kind of thing.
True.
So I'm going to repurpose that same content in several emails, and I'll probably do 6 to 8 every 3 weeks. Because like, how often do you want to hear from your Princess Party company?
Yeah, probably not.
Not that often. But, you know, every couple of weeks might be kind of like, oh, yeah, what a fun idea. You know what I mean? So I haven't sent those yet. I'm curious to see kind of what our attention will be there, but it'll be interesting. So I'm repurposing a lot of that content. So I scheduled one that's like how to throw an Elsa party, and we took 3 actionable items and repurposed it for some emails. And then I'm building out an affiliate program for her. Just like a lot of little things that are like going to really boost her everything that she just has not had either the know-how or the time. But like, they're not particularly challenging things to do or set up. You just kind of have to have had some experience,
right,
to know how to do it the right way. And I've done that a couple of times, and so it makes it easy to set it up for other people and hopefully interesting, you know.
There's 2 questions I want to ask you. First one is how does she do around like the holiday season? Because I feel like holiday season could be great for some of those parties, especially when companies are trying to do, you know, incorporate more like family stuff, like, hey, let's go to the pumpkin patch.
Yeah.
And like, hey, you could also hire one of these princesses to come, and, you know, I'm pretty sure a bunch of people have little children, especially around like Utah area.
Right.
So.
Right. Around like the Christmas time holidays, not great. It's pretty quiet.
Yeah.
And my logic, I think, is that if you have an extra couple $100, you're probably not going to hire a princess party. You're probably going to put that towards Christmas, you know,
Makes
presents.
Sense.
Other holidays she does do well, like for like 4th of July kind of things, or like occasionally Halloween parties or things like that. Like that's great because like, have a princess come over and be entertaining, right? And so she does occasionally do like corporate gigs or community gigs and things like that. So yeah, it just depends. But yeah, usually the end of the year is a little bit quiet, and then it starts to pick up towards the beginning of the year.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
The other question I was going to ask you is, you said you're kind of like a technical engineer marketer.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like those two don't really go together. And a lot of people are probably thinking like, what is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess my question is, what is that?
I don't know what that is. It's there's more of a space for it than you might think, because there's a pretty significant gap between engineers who know marketing and marketing who know how to code.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And so like, this most recent example. So today I've been working on an affiliate program for her, and I'm like, okay, I can go spend $150 on some affiliate program, and that'll like have it all pre-built for me. And then I kind of sat down to think about it, and I was like, you really probably don't need that many pieces, right? You just need like some links and then a cookie to be set. And then her sales process is manual anyway. So even when people fill out a digital form, she still has to call the person and finalize the sale. So there wouldn't be a ton of purpose in like having a fully automated affiliate program, because they couldn't check out and finish the purchase online anyway.
Right.
So I'm like, so if I can just set up a cookie that fires and then log it in a form field, she will get her digital form and she'll be able to see, oh, hey, Dan sent me this affiliate. And then she can go and pay me $5 or whatever the affiliate fee is, you know? And so I was like, cool, let me just do that myself. And that is not something an engineer would do or potentially know how to do. They might know how to do it, but they wouldn't know how to like fit that into the marketing scheme. And that's definitely not something, I mean, you tell me, would a marketer know how to build a cookie in the... And so,
I'm still, I've been in marketing in how many years? And I still don't know even what cookies are.
Right. And so I think there's kind of this gap that exists in between marketers and engineers, where technology is advancing and digital marketing is getting really complex and technically involved. And you have to have people who are able to comprehend and set that up right. Like, I mean, people we work with, Russ and Hannah and Katie, are really great examples of this too, where they're basically engineers who just happen to be working on the marketing side. You know what I mean?
I agree.
So, I mean, to me, like, I consider myself like a technical marketer because I can write code. I'm not good. I don't want to like give anybody the ideas that I'm like a really great engineer. But I can jerry rig something to make it work, and I can read a lot of it. And I also just like, I think knowing a lot about how websites work from a marketer's perspective is really valuable, because that enables you to do kind of that product-led growth motion, where I don't think engineers are thinking about how do I get people to like re-engage on my website and turn this into a product, right?
They're definitely not.
But marketers and growth people absolutely are. And so I think, a lot of times this is like kind of like the growth space or like the growth product marketing space. Technical marketing, it's all kind of, there maybe are slightly different, but a lot of it's kind of like you are technical, you understand some technical concepts, and you're able to build that into properties that marketing is controlling or using. Does that make sense?
That makes more sense, yeah. Because honestly, like you said, the engineers aren't really focused on half of those things. And so I know oftentimes whenever I brought like requests like that to them, they're like, why?
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, after I explain it, they're like, doesn't make sense. And
Or
I'm
just
like,
not high enough on their priority list, or they got to add it to a roadmap and it takes 6 months, and you're like, it's just not. So a lot of my know-how kind of stemmed from me needing to get things done and not having engineers who could do it, either because I didn't have them because I was working at a small company, or the engineers at the tech company were just too busy to be able to get that done. And so it kind of turned into like somebody's got to do it and I need it done. I'm just going to figure out how to do it myself. You know what I mean?
No, yeah. 100%.
So I became semi-technical because of it, So
What part of marketing would you say you align most with? Like, what's your sweet spot?
I don't know. I started off doing like SEO and content, and I know a lot about that. And SEO and even SEO and content marketing are becoming more and more distinct. And then even inside SEO, you've kind of got like the content focused side and then the more technical side. But technical is more like solving website setup errors, and I'm pretty good in that. I think I probably got started in that, and that's kind of where I learned some of those technical components of like how to set up cookies and how to build sites in a way that they can index correctly and things like that. But I think I have worked with a lot of engineers, and then I kind of have worked on product teams as well, and so I've kind of deviated a little bit out of marketing into more of a product or an engineering sphere. And I think that's kind of where that growth space exists. And so I like growth a lot of times is used, it depends on the company, but like a lot of companies
It really does.
In my opinion, the right way to talking about growth is you're talking about acquisition, experimentation, retention, engagement, and monetization. Those are like the 5 principles of growth. And sometimes those fall in marketing, sometimes those fall in product or engineering. And I have seen growth be like, come run our ads. And it's like, that's, you're not totally wrong, because that is an acquisition thing, but it also is like not, you're not empowered with like the engineers. You don't have the tools you need to solve it. So like I more put myself in like a growth space, but I lean more towards the product side. One time I had a conversation with Matt, who's one of our mutual friends, and I said, I'm a marketer who knows a lot about product. And he says, I'm a marketer who knows a lot about sales. And I thought, that actually makes a lot of sense. Like, some marketers are really great with sales teams. They know how to work with sales. They kind of know those flows, and they know how to really get those leads into like a sales funnel. And that makes a ton of sense. And I think in my experience, I've worked a ton with product teams and more like that product like growth motion and building websites that are a little bit more engaging. And so I lean more towards like, let's build something that will do a lot of the work for us. And so I'm sure there are more facets to it, but that's kind of like the two lines that I see is there's marketing/product and marketing/sales. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I would probably put myself more along like marketing/sales.
Yeah, sure.
I've worked a lot with sales teams and like tried to help them like get more leads down the funnel.
Right.
I've worked a lot of like funnel stuff.
Right.
I've worked a little bit with like products and stuff like that, and like working with them. But I think I lean more towards the marketing with sales.
Yeah.
Than I do with the marketing with product. But I think like there's still a good mixture, but
sure. And I think that's
one stronger.
That's more traditional for marketing in general and digital marketing, but I think it depends on the product, it depends on the company, but I think I really like when you have a world or a product where marketing can go directly to the product. That to me is like a really cool experience. Like
100%.
If you work on a marketing team at like Figma, you don't really need to have anybody go to a sales team. You know, I'm sure they have enterprise sales or whatever, but like, why would you have a sales team? Because you can just have people download the product, and then marketing focuses and works with the product and the growth team to figure out how do we get people to pay for this product. And that's really where the sale occurs, but there's not a whole lot of communication happening. Maybe occasionally, maybe some emails, but it's like a very different process than working with sales. And that to me is like much more exciting. And I'm obviously very biased, but that's an exciting prospect to me of like, how do I get people to want to use this bad enough that they would pay for it? Like, that's really interesting to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's an interesting like outlook on it, because in essence, if you're you can always have like marketing and product, because people, if you're marketing and the flow overall to like purchase your product is good, like people will go and buy it. Yeah. Without even having to interact with a salesperson.
And that's my ideal way to shop today too. Like, I don't want to talk to anybody. Like, just let me go buy my thing. Leave me alone.
Yeah, Amazon's a perfect example of that.
Just leave me alone. Let me buy my thing. Don't send me your sales emails. I hate when I'm walking around Best Buy and there's like, can I help you with anything? I'm like, dude, just leave me alone. It's the Ron Swanson. I know more than you, you know? Yeah. So anyway, yeah.
It's like, I've researched this at my house for the past 20 hours. Right. It's like, I know it. I'm coming in to get this specific item. Yeah. You can help me carry it.
That's exactly right. Exactly what you're thinking. Or are you on commission? Yeah, you want that. Okay, anyway. So yeah, I just default to that. But sorry, I interrupted you.
No. That was what I was gonna say. Like, sure, there's definite need for sales and to drive it, and there's a lot of companies that are sales driven and make good money. But I think ultimately, like, you have to have some level of marketing, right? Like, no company survives without marketing, because if they don't know who you are, they're not gonna buy your product. Regardless of how good your product is, right? But I think that way that you're describing, I think a lot of companies would be like, that's an ideal way when people come to us and they buy our products, right? Like, I think if you look at a lot of like the giant companies today that everybody knows, like household names companies,
well, especially tech companies.
Oh, especially tech companies. Like, people go and find them. Yeah. Like, there's not salespeople calling them or emailing them. Like, sure.
Well, a lot of times, like, in my experience at least, it's like I'm Googling solutions to a problem, and a good company that's doing good marketing is at all of those places where I'm Googling questions or I'm like trying to find answers. You know, they're like, hey, we are an answer to this problem. You know, like that's good marketing. That's clever, you know? Yeah. So anyway.
I agree with that. That's fantastic.
Let me ask, if you are going to give one insight to, you know, my college students who want to get into kind of the tech sphere and, you know, anything kind of in like the marketing realm, whether it's specific to Lifecycle or just kind of general marketing, what's like one piece of advice or one tip you give to younger junior marketers up and coming that want to get into the tech space?
Ooh, that's good. I think it'd have to be learn and fail fast, right? Like, you're getting into tech. A lot of tech and a lot of innovative stuff is people failing like quickly, right? And I think school teaches you it's not okay to fail, but when you get out into the real world, like, you need to fail and very quickly
Yeah.
and learn, right?
Yeah.
It's not just like, hey, let's go out and let's fail.
Right.
And
right.
like, you know,
It's like a. No, I don't want to call it planned, but like there's a word that I'm thinking of. Anyway, it's just like it's intentional failure, right?
right. And so it's like, let me go out, let me go make mistakes, right? I think the sooner you can make those mistakes, right? Of course, nobody wants to like make mistakes, right? And like come out there and be like, hey, like I suck, right? Or, I just failed. But I think you honestly learn a ton from your failures than you can from a lot of your wins, right? Like
Sure.
a lot of times, like people go out and they're like, hey, I had this huge success and like this happened. And it's like, okay, well, how did it happen? And you're like, I just kind of happened upon it.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people will say that more, but like,
I just kept trying stuff and
yeah,
it
just
kept
keep
working.
trying, yeah. And but like if you go and you do something and you fail and then you're like, and you have some success, you're like, I know how to do the successful part because I failed and I did the wrong thing first.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you look back in like history, a lot of things that like a lot of innovations that happened.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those inventors, like they're recognized for a lot of things that they've done, but they failed a ton more times than that one success.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing, especially working in tech, right? Like a lot of tech companies are still figuring things out.
Yeah.
They're moving in a good general direction,
Right.
but they're still figuring out how things operate. And like even giant companies that look like they have everything together, like they have fires every single day.
Yeah.
Right. And I think working at a bigger company is like maybe not as like fun and great because a lot of times like they look at like your failure like more like how school kind of looks at it.
Sure.
Another piece of advice which I think is also good is like work at smaller companies.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Like, really experiment.
Like brand new startup kind of thing.
Yeah. Brand new startup. Something that like you can like obviously if you're coming out of college you're kind of used to like bootstrapping a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so like if you can eat some ramen for a little bit longer,
Yeah.
like try it out, but it gives you so much exposure
Yeah.
to different aspects, right? And so you might find out, hey, like I really like this aspect of marketing, but you wouldn't know if you're working at a huge company where they put you in this one little box
Right.
and say, here's what you do every day, all day.
Right.
Right? I think that's like kind of like the Ford model where it has the conveyor belt, like here, you screw on this door and that's all you do every single day. But like at a startup company, you're kind of expected to wear multiple hats.
Right.
And so it's like, I can try out affiliate marketing, I can try out content marketing, I can get into SEO, I can get into LCM, I can get all these different aspects of marketing that I can touch and try out. And then if you're like, hey, I really like this one aspect, then you can go right into that one thing.
Totally.
So
I mean, that's exactly what I did too. I worked at they weren't a brand new company. They were kind of like starting a new side of the company, and they were selling solar panels, and they had no idea how to do that. They didn't have any website or any infrastructure, and it was kind of just like, just go make sales. We can wrap up here in a second. But they were just kind of like, just go make sales. And I was like, I don't really know what to do. And so I kind of just researched a bunch of things, and I found SEO and content marketing to be cheap and not super hard to do, and just kind of took a stab at that and built them a website. And it worked. It worked great. But yeah, that was very much how I got started too. Is just get in, try some stuff, see what works, see what I like, figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, you've been working with a lot of like SMBs, right? A lot of smaller companies.
Yeah.
What do you see that they do now that they could do better? Right? Like what
Depends
are they
on the
doing
size of
where
the company too.
Mm.
Because if you got like your one person SMB, the answer is everything.
That's true.
Rarely are they doing everything right. Even I've got some more family that they've probably got 20 employees or so. They do some financial planning, and they are really, really good at that part of financial planning, but they're not even kind of thinking about a lot of the digital marketing,
Right.
And it's totally possible that's just not a good fit for their market or their industry at the time. I usually think like there's probably some benefit that could be gleaned from it, but it just depends. And then you get to kind of, I'd say most of like my experience has been B2B SaaS, software as a service.
Right.
And so with that, you're targeting companies that have some amount of employees and some amount of revenue, because they're buying products that cost $200 to thousands of dollars a month, right? And so they've got some revenue and they know kind of what their pain points are, and we're trying to solve those pain points. And so when you get to those companies, a lot of times it is all about like reducing effort in the right places. You know what I mean? Like if people are spending a bunch of time packing and shipping products, how do we streamline that? And so maybe I'd call it like the optimization of processes, whether digital or in a warehouse or wherever. It's all about like optimization. And so It just kind of depends on the size, the different needs of the companies. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I see where you're going with it. I guess from the aspect of like how to market themselves better, where would you, what kind of things would you do there?
Yeah.
Right. Like, what would you really want them to like understand? I'm pretty sure you've explained what they should be doing, but like, what is like the thing that you want to drill home? Like, if only you knew what I knew about this aspect, you'd be a lot better.
For me, a lot of it comes back to understanding the user or the customer. And so however you can collect that information, that's what you should be focusing on. If you are a single person and you have 5 extra hours a week, figure out how you can learn more about your customers, whether that's quantitative, qualitative research, website data, whatever you can do. If you're a 20-person company, if you're a 50-person company, figure out who is your customer, how are they, what do they want, like what problem are you solving for them, and then learn more about that. Once you have that information, there's tons of stuff you can do. You can reduce friction, you can add appropriate friction, you can build smoother processes, but I think a lot of that, it all stems from like understanding your user and their needs, and then the role that your product fills for them. So I'd say to fix your marketing, to improve your marketing, understand your user better, and then hopefully the steps you should take after that become clearer. Because if you go, hey, our users, like, maybe you have a product that, I don't know, it's a water bottle, people love it, but it breaks after 6 months or whatever, right? Or whatever it is. It's a water bottle that you're selling, and so you go, well, why aren't we getting more return visitors? Like, you can uncover that people buy it once and then never come back, and you go, well, could they come back? Like, Stanley's a good example of this. Why do so many people have multiple Stanleys? You know what I mean?
I wondered that myself.
So what can you do to improve repeat sales? Maybe that's a problem you identify. Or, hey, you know what? It takes 18 visits to our website for somebody to buy something. How do we reduce that to 5, right? What are the steps we can take? How can we reduce friction? So I think all of that comes from just understanding your users, your customers, and their journeys, and figuring out how to like refine those. Sometimes that's creating content, sometimes that's emails, sometimes it's a better website. It can be a number of different things, but just the core of it for me is understand your users and then start to make steps from there.
I like that. You're talking about like understanding your users. How would they gather that information? Like you're talking about a small business. They're trying to be scrappy, bootstrap a little bit. And you're talking about the different levels. Like, how would you obtain some of that information?
Yeah. I mean, start with asking questions, right? Like, what is it you want to know? Maybe the answer is like, let's like use my Princess Parties by Natalie example. Yeah. And that can be, okay, I know. So maybe I'd start with, what do I know about my current customers? I know that they have birthdays once a year. Some of them refer other people to me, and maybe that's all I know. I don't know, and then maybe list out these things you don't know. Do they use your website? At what point in their journey do they use their website? And so there's lots of ways you can figure this out. You might start by just asking people, like, hey, how did you hear about us? Did you get referred by somebody? Did you just find us on Google? Like, start collecting information about how you got referred. You might start to collect information about how many visits does it take for one user to do something, So I think there are a couple different ways you can go about like collecting that. But to me, the core of it is just start asking questions. Identify what you do know, identify what you don't know, and then just start to answer the questions you don't know. And at least in my opinion, some of those will be pretty glaring, right? If you don't know how much website traffic you get, maybe figure that out and identify if that's a good channel for you or not.
I like that.
What don't you know? Answer that first, and then once you've kind of identified what you don't know, I think it'll be obvious how to start to solve other problems.
I like how you brought up the example of like the Stanley cups and stuff like that, because honestly, like Stanley's, it's not a brand new company. No, right?
I think they've been around for years, right?
Yeah, they've been around for years. Everybody
but
knows
all of a sudden,
like, that green kind of like thermos looking water bottle. And you kind of see some of those like trendy videos where they're like, hey, like so-and-so got me a Stanley, and then they show like it's the green water bottle one.
Right.
Or even like a lot of the funny memes and jokes about.
There are some good ones out there,
There's some good ones.
Yeah.
But I'm almost curious to like dive into like, how did Stanley get that so quickly, right? Like, they obviously there's no such thing as like kind of like overnight success.
Sure.
But like, it's almost like that's exactly what happened. Like, for me, like, sure, I've seen Stanley, but it was never memorable. But now I see a Stanley Cup and it's like, oh, that's a Stanley, of course.
It's a status symbol even,
Yeah.
Totally.
So I think like...
That might be podcast number 2 is let's dig into Stanley, figure out what they're doing.
I think that'd be awesome. Maybe even we like kind of dissect some of like the different things that other successful companies have done in marketing.
That'd be great.
Because like I mean, for me, I'm a Yeti guy.
Yeah.
You know, but I remember when Yetis used to be really good. You go Owala?
I like Owalas a lot. Cheers.
And so I was like, you know, for me, I'd probably still stick with the Yetis. Like, I just can't get the whole Stanley Cup with the straw.
Mm-hmm.
But
not a fan.
Yeah, not a fan. But and maybe there'll be some repercussions for that. Not being a fan.
You'll hear about it.
But yeah, no, I'd be interested in seeing like, there's a lot of companies that kind of blow up pretty quick. And,
seemingly.
Seemingly, right? Like, obviously, there's a lot of stuff that they do in the background. And it's almost kind of like, how do you dissect some of that and, like, try to get in the heads of those people of, like, hey, guys, we're going to turn this around. And, like, we're going to get profitable.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, that'd be a good, we should do that. Do some homework on that. Figure out, come back and talk about it. That'd be really interesting.
Yeah, because I think, like, even with Stanley, right? Like, Stanley might even be trending down, right?
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, I
they're
think
starting to get to like
they've reached their viral peak, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, do they have sustainability post virality?
Right.
Is the question they need to be asking, right?
Because everything that goes up must come back down.
Usually does, yeah.
Yeah.
Apple, but you know, everything else.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe not those conglomerates, but
yeah, there's
definitely some trendy things.
The majority do. Yeah.
Right.
That'd be a good round two. I like that. We'll dissect that a little bit. It'll be fun. Cool, man. Okay. Well.
Yeah.
We got banana bread upstairs if you want some.
Yeah, I'd be down.
Let's get some banana bread.
Let's go.
Okay. That'll
Turn
do.
this thing off.